Hi everybody, this is Scott with Homebrewers Outpost and homebrewers.com. Today I'm going to transfer a beer from a primary fermenter here to a secondary fermenter here. Using a secondary fermenter is an optional step in making beer that you might want to consider for two main reasons. The first reason is to improve clarity in your finished beer. As you can see in the primary here, I've got a lot of fermentation byproducts up on top here. I've got a yeast cake down on the bottom, and you may not be able to see, but there's still some yeast in solution here. So the process of siphoning beer from this container into this container is going to help precipitate some of those solids. It's also going to keep me from kicking up this big thick yeast cake when I do go to bottle. The second main reason for using a secondary fermenter is to keep the beer from picking up off flavors if you're not going to get a chance to bottle it for a while. You can see we've got the yeast layer down here, and if you leave the beer in the primary for more than about 3 weeks, this layer of yeast on the bottom is going to begin to die, and as the yeast dies, the cells begin to rupture and release off flavors into the beer. So I can prevent the beer from picking up those off flavors by moving it into a different container. Once I've got the beer into a different container, I can leave it there for a period of weeks or even months if that's appropriate for the style before I get around to bottling. All I'm going to need to make the transfer is right here. I've got 5 gallons of beer in a 6.5 gallon glass carboy here. I've got an auto siphon here to siphon the beer. I've got a 5 gallon better bottle carboy here with an airlock, a sanitized airlock on top, again for sanitation reasons. You'll notice that this container is only 5 gallons, this one is 6.5 gallons. In a primary fermenter, you want enough room to accommodate the fermentation. You can see from some of the fermentation residue here that as this beer was actively fermenting, the krausen on top of the beer was coming up, rising up to the top of the carboy. This wasn't a particularly active fermentation. If I'd have had more fermentables in the beer, that might have come all the way up here. So the extra 1.5 gallons of headspace I have here is used to give us room and to keep the beer from coming out the top. In a secondary over here, this active fermentation is done. So the beer is nice and calm. I'm going to transfer it over, and I want it to be, this carboy to be as full as I can to have the smallest amount of headspace here exposed to oxygen. As I've said before, oxygen is the enemy of finished beer. It does cause oxidation and will give a cardboard flavor to your beer. So we want our secondary fermenter to be as small as possible to accommodate the beer. I'm going to use an auto siphon to make this transfer. If you don't like siphoning with a racking cane, you really might want to make an investment in an auto siphon because it's a whole lot simpler to use. Now I've already sanitized this in the sink over to my right just by pumping sanitizer through it. I don't have to prime the siphon because that's the beauty of an auto siphon, it's self-priming. So I'm just going to put the auto siphon into the beer here, put the other tube into my carboy here. I'm going to put it pretty far down so that I can avoid a lot of splashing, again to prevent oxidation. So now all I need to do is pump a few times, and my siphon is flowing and the beer is going into the carboy. You'll notice that I've tilted the carboy by placing a phone book under one end. I've done this so that I can pick up as much beer as possible and leave as much sediment behind in the primary as possible. The foam you're seeing here is residue from my sanitizing solution. I've used a product called Star San, which is a foaming sanitizer. So the foam is perfectly acceptable and normal, and even if it is a little disconcerting when you first look at it, but after a while it kind of gives you a warm fuzzy feeling, lets you know that the sides of the carboy are continuing to be sanitized as the beer travels up. The transfer is complete. Now I'm ready to put this beer away for at least another week before I get around to bottling it. I like to get on a regular schedule when I'm brewing. I'll brew the beer, let it ferment in the primary for a week. After a week, primary fermentation is almost always complete. So at that point, I'll transfer it over into the secondary and let it sit in the secondary for another week to settle. Now, after a week, I can bottle it, keg it, or I can wait another 2, 3, or 4 weeks, as I said earlier, before I package it.